Does anyone have a question? Does anyone have a question?
Stuart, it's Paula.
Yes.
Could you talk about emotion?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, emotion is something that we all live with, and everybody has it to certain degrees. And it's kind of layered, you know, there's the emotion we express in life, there's the emotions of fear, insecurity, there's all kinds of emotions. And it seems to me, what I've learned in my own life is that the highest of all the emotions is love, joy, happiness. And I talk about this a lot, and because everything always comes back to this, because, you know, we get very emotional about things, especially about other people and family and stuff like that. And very often those emotional situations just drain us of our energy, you know, and we also can be really taken advantage of when we're trapped in emotions. People can play with us, they can play games with us, you know, and it could make life very difficult. So, you know, the answer to this is very simple. What do we all want in life? Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to have joy. They want to have love in their hearts. And the work we do is about that. It's about transforming all of these lower emotions into, you know, what the Hindus call ananda, into bliss, into love. And when we learn to do that, you understand, we don't get trapped in all of that lower emotion. And when we do get trapped in it, it's really easy for people to take advantage of us. We're blinded. It's like quicksand. We wind up in this kind of soup, you know, and we have no rational judgment. We have no judgment at all, frankly, because we're trapped in all of those emotions. So, you know, it's like a lotus flower, you know, it comes out of muddy water. Joy, love, happiness also comes out of muddy water. And what's the muddy water? It's those lower emotions: fear, security, anger, you know, the things that really almost take over inside us and blind us to ever have a clear vision of what life is about. You know, we fall in love with people, we get so emotionally intense that there's jealousy, there's, you know, hatred, there's, you know, we cling to the person, we cling to life, we cling. And when we do that, we're blinded. We cannot see what we are involved with in life. We can't see other people. We can't see even the most basic things in life. When you transform all of that emotion into love by building a really strong chakra system, we don't get blinded by these things. We know how to transform them. We don't allow them to create this kind of foggy night around us, you know? I mean, and we can, understand how essential it is for us to grow out of that muddy water, to really build a system inside that is strong enough, to really, live with the highest emotions. Now, emotions are really important, I mean, without emotions, people like dry. I mean, I once heard Whoopi Goldberg talk about like dry prunes, people that have emotions. And it's true, we need emotions, but we don't need to be lost in a swamp. So we need to be strong enough to transform all those lower emotions into love. It's the highest emotion: joy, gratitude, happiness. These are the highest emotions. And when we learn how to do that, it's like stepping out of a foggy cave, suddenly we can really see what's real in life, what's an illusion. We're not clinging to other people. We're not holding on to things in life. We learn how to detach ourselves from things. And, that unclear emotion forces us to do what I'm talking about. We cling, we hold on. Jealousy is one of the things that comes from that, which is a very dangerous emotion, jealousy, because it really blinds people to other human beings, and it blinds them more than anything else to themselves. And it forces them to cling to people, even if people don't want them in their life, they cling. And then the memories, the anger, the unhappiness of relationships that break up, they last for years, they get buried inside us. I mean, frankly, I always believe if a relationship breaks up, if you spend 6 months with that person, be grateful for the 6 months and move on. It's one of the best ways to detach oneself from a relationship that's gone south. That's really, just be grateful. You spent a year, 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, with that person. And why be angry at them? They shared their life with you for certain periods of time. When we get that, and I mean, look, I've been through it. I got married, I got divorced, and frankly, divorce is not an easy thing when people separate. But what enabled me to get through it is I constantly had to remind myself, I spent 7 years with this human being. I spent 7 years with them, and I was grateful for this. And whatever I went through with them, I learned an awful lot about myself, and I had to be grateful. It enabled me to get free of it when the cycle came to an end. The other thing is clinging, holding on to something that no longer exists. It's holding on to something that's like trying to hold on to a shadow, things that don't exist anymore. We cling to them. And mostly it's out of emotional insecurity. We need something to justify our life, so we try to force it on another human being. They will justify our life. They don't justify. We have to justify our lives. We have to get strong enough to be happy people no matter what is going on in the world and no matter what takes place in our lives. And then you really can handle emotion, I mean, you know what to do with it. And you say, okay, whatever it is. I see that with people with their animals, and then the animals die and people go into mourning for years sometimes with their pets. But we need emotion, because without emotion, as I say, we're like deserts, we're dry. But we need to learn to transform the lower emotions into joy and into love. And never cling to anybody. Never. Never be jealous of anybody. It's one of the worst emotions imaginable, being jealous. Because how could you live another person's life? You can't do it, you know? Everybody lives their own individual lives, and you know, we can't live somebody else's life. And if somebody wants to live in a promiscuous way, then we have to say, okay, that's what they, you know, let it go. Let it go. Move on in your life. It's like I wrote that book, Moving On, Finding Happiness in a Changed World. It's a very wonderful book. I don't know how many of you have read it, you know, but it's like, you know, little, you know, aphorisms about all of this kind of stuff.
Thank you so much, Stuart.
You're welcome. And it doesn't do anything. You understand, being jealous, clinging to somebody, demanding that somebody love you and they don't love you. All it does is create so much, you know, anger and despair and unhappiness. And what it really is a sign of one's own immaturity, that you can't move on from a situation. When you have that grounding inside, centered, you can move on and you save yourself so much agony, so much pain. And I know it's not easy. I've been through it. You know, I really have. I really have been through it a number of times. And I really learned from it a lot about myself, about my own immaturity and what I had to build in myself to not allow those things to, you know, drain my life away. I hope that's clear. You know, does anyone else have a question?
I
We
was going
need,
to ask you, Stuart, could you talk about maintaining the focus on the one point, whether it's in meditation, in or even outside of meditation?
well, you know, Wendy, it's so important what you asked. And I mean, I talk about this endlessly. I mean, you're here in meditation to build a system that allows you to stay in that one point, no matter what you do in your life. And I said, you can't go out into the world, oh my God, I got to get centered. Then you make yourself, but you're here to build that kind of system. I mean, I don't know what in life teaches anything like this. I mean, they learn it in the martial arts, you know? They talk about chi, they talk about, you know, the hara, they talk about getting centered there, you know, but they don't talk about, mostly, I don't know, I haven't been in every martial art class, but they don't talk about bhakti, love, you know, consciousness, quieting the mind. You know, I mean, what we do is kind of a martial art, but we're not going to get in a ring and fight somebody. It really is us and life. So you build that system in the meditation class and you take it with you. And every time you blow it in your everyday, you say, okay, I got work to do on myself. So you don't get upset when you make a mistake, you blow it, you get off focus. I got work to do on my, and you come back in this class and there's huge amounts of Shakti. And you use that Shakti to get that focus, that one pointedness. And then eventually you take it into whatever you do. The system organically does it. You understand? You have reconditioned your inner life to function that way. So that the class isn't just being focused here, it's building an inner life that enables you to be focused no matter what you do, whatever it is, but you got to build that kind of inner life. You know, you're not saying, oh, now I'm going to be focused. I remember once, I'll never forget, with Rudy, I told this story a lot, but it really is a good story. Rudy used to have these teachers come to the ashram, you know, like swamis, and they would give lectures. And he had Paravilayat Khan come, who was a very great Sufi master. And Paravilayat gave a talk, and in the back of the room, there were a bunch of these Muslim guys, who were creating a lot of ruckus. And they felt like the energy was like a very dangerous kind of energy, like a fight could erupt or something like that. And I remember we stepped out in the hallway and these guys were there. And the energy got very, very tense. And one of Rudy's students was standing there doing the double breathing exercise, and Rudy really got pissed off. He said, Schmuck, just, be conscious of the moment. Don't stand here doing the double breath. You'll wind up in heaven, you'll wind up at the end of your life. Just be conscious, because the moment is really what we're trying to, please try and sit still. The moment is what we are really trying to live. And you have to build a system that can do it organically. And that, honestly, that is all these classes are about. They're about spiritual nourishment to build that kind of inner life, which enables you to get connected with God, be focused when you live in the world, activate Kundalini. And none of that is possible if we don't build a system inside that is really focused. The hara has to be really strong inside. And that enables one to, you understand, you take it with you. You don't have to, you are it, and you live that way. I mean, I live with my daughter. She's a wonderful kid and she's doing really well, but sometimes she gets a little, gets tense. She doesn't have a lot of deep spiritual training, but she's doing really well in her life. And I'm very proud of her. It's wonderful. And in order for me to deal with it without getting into a fight with her, I have to be centered all the time. So I can take it, you understand? And then eventually it always works, it lasts about 5 minutes, 3 minutes sometimes, And then she'll smile at me and say, I love you, Daddy. You're the only one who treats me this way. You don't get angry at me when I get upset, But it's not something I think about. It's organic. So many years of doing this inner work and taking it with me, it just becomes part of life. You have reconditioned your inner life. And that allows you to receive God's energy, to work out your karma, and ultimately to attain a state of enlightenment. And the key to it is being grounded, the hara. Because when you're grounded, then the heart can open and it can stay open. It has the strength to stay open. The mind will get quiet. And then you can start receiving real wisdom, real knowledge, real creative energy. All is dependent upon that. It's the first thing I learned from Rudy. And he kept knocking it into my brains for 6 years. Being grounded, being centered inside. And allowing it to become organic to your inner life. Not something inorganic that you impose upon yourself. It comes from inside. It's a seed inside that grows. From that seed, the tree of life grows. Is that clear?
Yes. And I have two 20-something-year-old daughters, so doubly clear. Thank you.
Yeah. You got to be grounded when you deal with kids. You got to be grounded when you deal with anybody. I mean, everybody's I've never met anyone without problems in my life. And I stopped judging them. I just be grounded. You can deal with all this stuff. Because basically all they want is love, and they don't really know how to reach out for it. So you got to be grounded so you can deal with what they bring and turn the situation around. Does anyone else have a question?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, better 20 years old than, 13 years old, 14 years. That's really a situation. My daughter's 25 years old, so she's, Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Is there anything that you thought was really important when you were first starting out with Rudy spiritually that you're now like realizing wasn't really that essential?
That wasn't essential.
Yeah, like you were focused on a certain thing that you thought was like a big deal, but it didn't turn out not.
Yeah, I'll tell you the biggest one of all, Zach. I was focused on being a writer when I was younger. I would spend hours and hours and hours every day writing volumes of poetry. I studied acting when I was younger. I focused I wanted a creative life that way, to be a writer, actor, theater, all this stuff. And when I met Rudy, we had in Big Indian, we had a puja. I told this story. And, and he wanted, he told me, Stuart, in order for this to start the fire for the puja, I want you to bring your manuscript and we'll use your manuscript. I mean, it was the thing I probably was, most precious to me in my life. And I gave it to him. It completely transformed me. I remember he started to try to start the fire and it wouldn't start. And he got pissed off at me and said, because you didn't bring me your manuscript, I can't start the fire. Really, I gave it to him. The fire started immediately. And it was something that he realized and I realized that I had to get free of. It was so controlling my life, but I could never have grown if I would have just spent all my time doing that. And then 10 years later, I wrote, I don't know, a dozen books, which were much better than the things I was writing when I was younger. But I got free of it. You understand? I wasn't possessed by being a writer. And that was a really hard one because I'll never be, shit. I had all this volumes. I mean, I like volumes of poetry I had written. I could tell you stories about stuff like, and he, in fact, being around him made me surrender everything because I had never met anyone like him. And he made it clear to me what I really needed in my life. And it wasn't poetry, it wasn't money, it wasn't that, well, it was a spiritual life. And I realized by being around him, if you want a spiritual life, you got to surrender everything. It all has to go. And then the universe sends you what your karma is and what you have to live with. And it sends you incredible stuff that you have to live with. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I had to let go, and that I still have to let go of. But Rudy was a master at that, and if you listen to him and learn from him, and some of the things you had to let go of that would just rip right out of your gut that you were holding on to. But what comes back is exactly what you need to work out your karma.
I've been working on finishing up my book, and this is the second time you've answered one of my questions with this story. So I'm listening, taking it in.
Well, I tell it because it really is a very poignant story, and it was a very incredible point in my life where I had to move on to another level of inner work, and I discovered that this was keeping me from doing it. And that's why it's, and mostly it taught me that in order to write a book, the one person I had to get free of to write the book was myself. And the book comes. So my books, I started one book. I had this book, The Mystical Ferry Boat, which I really like. It's an interesting book, very surreal. It's fiction, but it's all about the 7 chakras. I started writing that in 1967, actually in Paris. I was living in Paris. and I started writing that book. Finished it in 2013. Really finished it, where now it's really finished, it's complete. I mean, the patience it takes to write a book, you know? I mean, I wrote another one called Little Sisters, which some of you know, and started writing that in, I don't know, 2092, 93. Finished it in also around 2013. But it was getting that focus and centeredness that gave me the patience to really learn how the craft of writing and how to use it to finish up things and to, you know, and how to attract really good teachers. I had a very wonderful teacher in my writing profession, and she was, I mean, she had won 2 Emmys, had bestsellers, and she was brilliant, and she really taught me. She just came into my life, and she really taught me an incredible amount about the craft of writing. Does anyone else have a question?
I have a question, Stuart.
Yes.
In this story today and others that you tell, it's about the teacher, kind of like a Milarepa moment where the teacher asks something so absolutely,
Outrageous.
yes, and that the healing comes from being willing to do anything. And
Well,
that's the
feeling,
teacher.
look, Milarepa built 13 houses. He was asked by Marpa to build a house, tore it down. Marpa said, tear it down, build me another one. I don't like the play. My wife doesn't. We're not building 13 houses. Well, the actual moral of that story is what could be left of Milarepa's ego after doing that? Nothing. What could be left of my ego giving Rudy my manuscript poetry? My whole ego was tied up in that manuscript. Understand? It was possessing me. What could Milarepa? He became one of the greatest poets and saints in Tibetan Buddhism, you know? They always, you know, picture him with his hand listening to the cosmos, you know, with his hand on his ear. That's the underlying meaning of these stories. You know, it took 13 houses for Milarepa to break down his ego. To giving up my years of work and my volume of poetry for me to surrender my ego. And most people are not willing to give up anything, you know? Oh, this, that, the other, you know, everything. They think they possess it, but it really possesses them.
Thank you.
Yeah, all these things are incredible stories about what people have to go through to have a spiritual life. Milarepa was a black musician. He was a, you know, magician. He was a murderer. He was a criminal when he was younger. You know, became one of the great saints in Tibet. Why? He built 13 houses. All of that had to go away. I had some great sculptures of Milarepa. Here's really extraordinary sculptures of Milarepa, paintings of Milarepa, incredible. Tonkas. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, if there are no more questions, then there'll be class tomorrow evening. Again, God bless you all. Thank you. And
Thank you, Stuart.
humility, I just love to be here sharing my life with you all. And we'll have class tomorrow evening. Take it home with you. Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Stuart.
much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.